So we meet with the 12th episode of this series of talks titled Buddha's Guide to Happiness. And I hope that those of you who have come along on this journey this far are beginning to get a proper sense of what happiness is all about. At least the happiness that you have been sold up until this day. And you're beginning to realize that it's not all that it's stacked up to be. When we begin to realize this, we begin to ask ourselves, is there an alternative? Is there a better way? Surely there must be another way. And that is where we are heading. But of course, before we move on to greener pastures, I need for all of you to be fully aware, cognizant, and I need for all of you to have fully comprehended the inherent flaw with the kind of happiness we have all our lives thus far sought and are today seeking as yet. Because it is once we understand this, we look for an alternative. We look for another way. Over the past weeks, and I think what is now over 2 months, we have been on a journey of discovery, questioning some of the most fundamental ideas and concepts and principles that we have learned to accept at face value without any question up until now. And through our questioning, on our journey of discovery, we've given ourselves food for thought to begin to reconsider life as it seems. One thing one of my teachers taught me, and it has served me very well throughout my life, and that is to always remain a student of life. Because it is understanding life, what life is all about. Isn't that true? If someone were to ask you, what is life? Would it not be true if your answer were to be, life is the understanding of life itself. The journey to understand it, the effort, the activity, the enterprise, the endeavors that we make to understand life itself. And that is what we are attempting to do and achieve through these talks. And along the way, make sense of life in a way that it is worth living. So, on that journey, let us take another step forwards today. Before we do so, let us take a moment to pay veneration to the perfect one, the magnificent one, the unparalleled one, the omniscient one, he who is our teacher, he who traveled this journey all by himself once, long time ago, without any guidance, without any teacher, without any instruction. On his own, he uncovered the truth that we speak so freely and so openly today. And that is none other than the Lord Buddha. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. You'll recall that over the last couple of weeks or so, we spent some time understanding the reality of pleasure. It is the truth that we need to realize, nothing else. You see, after all, that is what Buddhist philosophy is for. It is to realize the truth. So much so that at some point it will dawn on you that there's really nothing else we need to do. Buddhist philosophy, the Buddha's teaching, the Buddha's instruction, his guidance is all about realizing the truth. You don't really need to do anything else. You just need to realize the truth. And to realize the truth requires nothing other than, of course, some merit, because it is what enables you to open your eyes, metaphorically, and see things as they are, and guidance and some instruction as to how to see things as they really are. So, a bit of merit and some instruction. Once you realize the truth, then from there on, it is a case of living that truth and making it true for yourselves. So that will require some time and continued practice. What is this practice? The practice is simply to see things as they are. All will come clear as we make further steps forward on this journey. So you needn't worry if some of this might sound a little bit abstract just now. That's all right. So we started to discuss the concept of pleasure and also the idea that pleasure is the result of a process, and that process is that of relief from vexation. I think by now you know what it means to be vexed. It is something that we all have experienced in our lives. We can feel it. We can experience it. It is this feeling of unsatisfactoriness, the feeling that something's not quite right. It's the driving force, if you like, that pushes human beings and other sentient beings towards action, particularly in the pursuit of happiness. We discussed a number of examples. You may remember them in our previous talks, a multitude of examples, and all this for one purpose, that is to understand that happiness, that which we seek throughout our lives, and that is the primary objective of life itself, to achieve happiness and to remain happy. This happiness is not something that comes to us from the outside world. So through numerous examples we have discussed this, and I have also asked you to come up with your own examples, either to try and prove this concept or to try and disprove this concept, because either way you will realize that this is the truth. So I feel unashamed and unafraid to go as far as challenging you to disprove this idea, if at all possible, that pleasure does not come to us from the outside world. By outside world, I mean the objects that we see around us, people, events, and so on. Pleasure is not something that we achieve from the outside world. It's not something that we can import or even extract from the outside world. It is the product of relief from vexation, and that is a process. This process happens in the mind. But when the mind is not aware of this, when the mind is not knowledgeable about this, as has been for all of us up until now, up until we come across the truth, which is what you're able to listen to, and this is what you hear today. And once we understand this, then all comes clear. But until that point, it is our false belief, this misconception that pleasure comes to us from the outside world, that keeps us on our feet, that pushes us to exert ourselves in ways which are futile. Because you see, and now you must be able to see this, if happiness is what we seek, and yet happiness is not something we get from the outside world, then we should begin to ask ourselves, to what end, to what avail are all these people, ourselves included, struggling for? All our lives we have strived for it. Think about all the things we have gotten up to. There have been to no avail. Because what we sought from life, from the sights that we saw, the sounds that we listened to, the smells, the tastes, and the physical experiences that we sought, none of these things really brought us any happiness. So this really challenges our outlook on life. It prompts us to take a different approach, doesn't it? It prompts us to reconsider how we deal with the remainder of life. It matters not what age you are, whether you are a child, a teenager, an adolescent, an adult, or in your senile age. Matters not. If at some point in your life you begin to understand and realize this truth, then you will feel the urge, as it did for me once, and I'm sure it will do for all of you at some point. You will feel the urge to reconsider your plan for life. Because once you know that the path you're on is not going to get you where you want to go, and it's not going to get you what you want to achieve, then you'll realize that it's time to make some changes. And I hope that day is near for you if it hasn't already come to you. I don't mean you need to go forth and get into robes or the like, but at least if you begin to make some different choices in your life, I think life will be simpler. Life will be easier on you. Life will not be so taxing on you. Because you seem to get up to all sorts of things, a lot of trouble, a lot of effort for this one thing, and that one thing is happiness. Through these words, I hope you'll realize and you will be able to achieve a level of wisdom which will help you understand that you don't need to get up to so much. You don't need to exert yourself so much. You don't need to trouble yourself so much in the name of happiness. Now, at the same time, it's important for us to understand that what this does not mean is that once you understand this, then you'll just give up on everything and just live a very lackadaisical life. Just don't care about anything. Oh, it's no point. I don't need to strive anymore. I don't need to make effort anymore. So I'll just go and sleep all day. No, do you see me doing that? What am I here doing? What am I trying to do here? What I have understood, I have made it my life's endeavor, my life's ambition to share with others so that they may be able to achieve happiness for themselves. That has been my ambition ever since I got to realize the truth. And I want the same for you as well. You don't have to be a member of the clergy for that. You can be a layperson just as you are. What matters is that you speak the truth from there on. So once you understand that This beauty, we have used beauty to refer to pleasure in all sorts of different things. So we have used it as a very generic term for pleasure that we have sought through our eyes, ears, tongue, nose, and body. This beauty that we have sought all our lives, when we realize that it is not in the outside world objects, it's not in the people that we associate, and it's not in the events, and then you realize that to expect pleasure from these things is like trying to get water from a stone. It's meaningless, it's pointless, it's futile. It's never going to be of any value. Then once you realize that, your life becomes much simpler, easier. You can relax more, and you can simply be happier. So once you realize this, you will also want to share this idea with others, people you care about, people you want to be happy. Think about all the people that you live with, members of your family, your friends, your colleagues. Just take a moment to think about what they might be up to right now. If you're listening to this on a Sunday, well, you've got a working week just around the corner, haven't you? So come Monday, people all around the world will be working their socks off. We'll start a long week of toiling to achieve something. And that something is happiness. But they're going to be doing all the wrong things for that purpose. Would it not be better if they knew what they had to do? Would it not be better if they did something that was actually constructive, productive, useful? Would it not be good if you could live the rest of your life in a productive manner? Spend the remainder of your time alive on this earth in a way that actually helps you achieve something useful. Because unfortunately, the same cannot be said for virtually all of the things that we have been doing throughout our lives up until this point. If everything we've done in the name of happiness, really, when you look under the hood, what's happened is we have allowed ourselves to vex about various things. We have allowed what other people have said to indoctrinate our minds, and based on a false notion, attached ourselves to various things, and those attachments have led our minds to get into a state of vexation. And then the very things that we began to vex about, once we achieved them, that resulted in relief from vexation, and that is what we experienced as pleasure. And then falsely, we thought that was the happiness that we have been seeking throughout our lives. But this pleasure, which is what we actually experienced, rather than true happiness, blinded us. It blinded us so much that once we experienced it once, then we fell for it. It was like drugs. Once you had it, you needed it. And look at how far you have come. As I said, think about throughout the world what's going to happen tomorrow. If tomorrow is a Monday, then people all over the world will be getting up to all sorts of things in the name of happiness. And then again, come the weekend, think about what people get up to. They go sightseeing, they'll cook something within air quotes nice, they'll arrange a party. I'm not saying any of these things are bad or evil or that they should stop immediately. Not at all. because that is not again what Buddhism is for. It is simply to realize. It is simply to ask ourselves, to achieve what? Have we been doing these things? And did they really give us what we sought from them? Think about it, folks. Think about your lives. As I said, your life is the best lab that you could have asked for. And in this lab of life, you have to test these ideas so that they may either be proven false or true. Think about all the things that you got up to. As a child, think about all the things you got up to, whether it was play, parties, entertainment, the things that you learn to admire, the things you learn to experience and enjoy, music, games, video games, films, going out with friends, and having a nice time, or at least we thought that was what we were doing. But you see, then you moved on to become a teenager, and then more of the same, just different stuff, different variety, but all of the same in one way. And then moved on to become an adult, and we just went on doing things that our adults, our seniors, people who've gone on this path before us, taught us was what we had to do to achieve happiness. So it was a case of the blind leading the blind, and one after the other, we marched single file through life when there was a better alternative, when there was something far better, when true happiness was within our reach. But alas, there was no one to show that to us. Without a teacher, we were blind. Without someone who had seen the truth and someone to show us the truth, we were blind. So we marched one after the other, and we continued up until where we are today. But what matters is not how you have lived life thus far. What matters is how you move from this point forwards. Because no matter where you are, once you decide to set the sail, from here on, you can get to a different destination than the one you headed all this time. So this is about getting your bearings right. This is about recalibrating your life. As simple as these talks might be, the intended effect is a large one. It's a huge one. I intend for you to be able to live fuller lives, better lives, happier lives, more fulfilling lives, more satisfying lives, more useful and more productive lives. Because what a pity it would be to have gone through life with all its ups and downs, with all its challenges, with all its adversities, if at the end of it, when all is said and done, we have achieved nothing. And why do I say nothing? Because I know when I say these words out loud, this may not sit comfortably with some of you, perhaps even most of you. Because if there's one thing that we don't like, if there's one thing that we find most unsettling, that is the feeling that what we have done with good intention, what we have done with conviction up until now has been a waste of time. But unfortunately, as I realized it myself at one point, this is a realization that you will all have to come to at some point. It does not mean that it's all doom and gloom, or that we need to cry and weep and lament over it. It does not mean that we have to now mourn about it. Because it's never too little too late. If it's the truth, then it matters not when we realize it. If some things the truth, then even if it's the last thing that we realize, the last moment before we close our eyes for the last time, that's still worth it. Because I share this with you because I appreciate that some of our listeners may have lived a large part of their lives by now. Perhaps you're in your late 50s, maybe 60s, 70s, 80s, and so on. And perhaps you're thinking to yourself, my, what did I sign up for? Maybe I shouldn't have heard this, because all this time I lived happily, and now I'm beginning to realize that actually my life has been worthless. Perhaps I shouldn't have tuned in. Ignorance is bliss. Some of you might have thought to yourselves by now. I'm trying to convince you that that is not the case. Because whenever you realize this, from that point forwards, you can begin to live a fulfilling life. A life that is truly one that gives you happiness. Because if you are alive and you can hear me, remember the worst is yet to come. Isn't it? Because as I said, some of you may be 55, 65, 75, 85, 95, or maybe it's your last 5. Whichever 5 it is, the worst is yet to come. And that inevitable fate awaits all of us. And when that day comes, folks, a deep sense of suffering will overcome all of us if we're not prepared for it. You see, in our lifetime, we can do whatever we want, whatever we can attempt to try and keep suffering at bay. But there comes a point, doesn't it, when there is nothing you can do to run or hide the ultimate fate that awaits all of us. And if we are not ready to face it, if we have not understood that pleasure does not exist in the objects that surround us, in the people that surround us, in the activities that we have done thus far in our lives, then when the day comes where we have to say goodbye to all of them, that will leave within our minds, within our souls, a deep sense of vexation from which you will have no escape. And I don't want that for any of you. I want for all of you, from this point forward, to be able to live a happy life, a fulfilling life, a life where external factors cannot take away your happiness, cannot falter your sense of satisfaction, your composure, cannot derail you from a fulfilling life. I want that for all of you. Because when poverty comes, you can go ask for help. When ill health comes, you can go ask for help. If you're hungry, you can go ask for help. If you're thirsty, you can go ask for help. If you need shelter, again, you can go and ask for help. But when the ultimate fate comes, who can you ask for help? Because none have escaped this ultimate fate. When there is no one among us who has escaped this ultimate fate, how can they help someone else escape it? And when that day comes, you know you're going to have to say goodbye to everything around you. That is why people fear it so much. What if you could face it fearlessly? Is it not important that we prepare ourselves for that? Is it not prudent, when we know that it's inevitable, that we prepare ourselves for it? And what is the preparation that we need to do? You know you can't run. You know you can't hide. You can only prolong